The markets are making all-time lows for altcoins, which is great if you want to get into any position, but it's not great if you are having an altcoin portfolio like me. So in this video, we discuss whether or not my portfolio is completely dead. The primary question is whether or not the actual altcoin markets are completely dying down. At least I'm not dying down. You might suggest I am, but it's just hay fever, which is great. But it's in the same sentiment as this market, and from here it's up only. Anyways, there is vital information that the markets are going to be changing, but before we continue, if you do enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel. I'll make sure to try to make the best content possible in order to have a success in this wonderful life as a crypto investor and trader. The thing with the markets is that right now the focus is definitely there on crypto. We have the Bitcoin ETF flow, which is very constant, which starts to pick up some momentum. As in the recent week, we had more than 1.5 billion coming into Bitcoin, through which we have seen that Bitcoin has been going to 106k and has been starting to attack the highs again. While on the other hand, there's more Ethereum ETF flow taking place in the Bitcoin ETF flow, which is that there's more than 800 million flowing into the Ethereum ETF during this month, which is a 25% increase of the total money that is flown into the Ethereum ETF. And then on top of that, we have two new categories yielding a lot of momentum towards the crypto markets with the recent Circle IPO taking place, which doubled after the listing of the IPO, which is basically saying that there is so much interest into the blockchain infrastructure and that there's a lot of hype from institutions and other participants to get an allocation into the markets, that they want to buy any asset that is basically on the stock markets, which is then transferring into the stablecoin and DeFi sector, as we saw that the Bitcoin treasury companies are in a full bull market as they go vertical. Most of those companies that have a Bitcoin treasury have been going 10 to 15x, as people think that it's an actual multiplier to trade on for your Bitcoin positions and that it's a risk-free trade, which of course is not the case, but it is yielding enormous returns if you are in those markets. However, if you want to invest into those treasury companies, then you'll need to understand that on deeper levels, you need to know how their debt is structured and what risk they have been taken to be getting those Bitcoins to putting them on the balance sheet. So it's not a risk-free trade. Nothing is risk-free in general, which means that there are also coins, or we also see charts that are absolutely destroyed. And one of the examples is Optimism, for instance. And most of those altcoins have been coming down by approximately 90% from their all-time highs and have been going down only for the entire year of 2025, which is the inverse of what we were expecting with the markets in general. So that makes it questionable whether we are actually going to be seeing any altcoin run. However, fundamentally, not much has been changing with the markets. All of them are making partnerships with Web2 companies, banks, institutions, and other parties, while the underlying token has continued to fall as everybody's looking for liquidity to be getting. Of all the big investors in the VC space, it's the same. So that's why it's a very tricky market. But we also need to realize that we are in the final stages of manipulation at this point, as there's still no regulation taking place. It is going to come, which means that basically any big market maker or player can manipulate or move the markets as much as they can in a favorable way that they want, which on top of that provides a very nice pattern correlation with what we have been seeing in previous stages of the markets, because the current market circumstance is comparable to the period of 2019, where Ethereum started to wake up and altcoins continued to fall until they started to rally substantially. So this period is extremely comparable, where you can say that the market is already an Ethereum market, and the next leg up for Ethereum is going to be when the altcoins finally start to kick in. So the constant bleed of altcoins is extremely painful, where some are making new lows or retesting those lows, but then suddenly the markets are reversing and shooting away. That's quite comparable to the price action that we're currently seeing, and that's why it's time to look at the charts to see what the markets are actually providing. Now let's start analyzing the portfolio, which is a lot less than we were starting it with. We are actually printing all-time lows with the portfolio, which is great. I'll be adding a tracker on the valuation of the portfolio in the upcoming updates. For now, it's more or less important to be looking at the charts and to see where we are at with the entire altcoin and Bitcoin bear market. And as you can see, basically everything and all the altcoins have been hitting their lows in April of this year. We remember that during that period, we were basically saying that Black Monday was going to happen. And from that Black Monday period, the market started to reverse upwards. And the first resistance point is being used as a take profit level, after which the market started to fall again. In that sense, it is currently again retesting those lows, which is very much comparable to the previous cycles that we have seen. As you can see that with Litecoin in 2019, we also had a pretty substantial run in June of 2019. We came all the way down to test those lows of December 2018, consolidated for a long period sideways before we started to take off, which is comparable to what we are witnessing here with optimism, which is also comparable to the previous periods of optimism where we were testing those lows, and then all of a sudden we started to make the first change of the markets rotating back upwards, which as a matter of fact we are currently seeing with SAI taking place. So what do we see with SAI? We made the low in April, we started to rally, we saw some take profits taking place here, and from there the markets corrected back down, it created a higher low, and we started to make a strong bullish engulfing candle, and the rotation starts to kick in. So very likely something like SAI is going to be the first one starting to yield itself back to the highs that we witnessed from December of 2024. Now, if we look at things like TIA, this one continued to fall. So what do we want to see with this one? We'd like to prefer to have a reclaim of the $2.15 level, and then we can start seeing a rally towards the highs above $4. Similar for Tau, which is currently retesting and has been showing some strength, as it also bottomed out in April at $180 and it's currently at 350, and we have been using Tau to be compounding it into the other altcoins. And ultimately, we can still look at this chart here, where the altcoin chart divided by gold or valued by gold is currently still down more than 50% of the all-time high that we see in 2021. So the real valuations of those altcoins are still down substantially heavy, and they are comparable to the lows of December 2023 and October 2024, which means that the actual bull market hasn't even begun. And if we're looking at all those smaller altcoins, despite the fact that they continue to fall, we're still making and printing a bullish divergence, and we're still building it up. So the moment that this starts to shift and the macroeconomic playing field is going to change, things like Wormhole and Omni and Evo are all going to repeat their pattern, which is that they reverse back upwards and they go back towards the November highs. During these markets, I'm always looking for opportunities to build my portfolio, and OKX is bringing you an opportunity. They are the first fully licensed exchange in Europe with the lowest fees. And to help you a little bit with your portfolio and to celebrate this milestone, they are giving away up to 50 euros in Bitcoin if you sign up today on the exchange. Signing up can be done within 5 minutes, and if you deposit 100 euros worth of crypto, you'll receive the first 20 euros in Bitcoin. Start rebuilding your portfolio today. Go to the link in the description or scan the QR code and enjoy up to 50 euro in Bitcoin. The question is, are altcoins dead? And the short answer is no. The long answer is we are facing a very big challenge while investing into altcoins and betting on a certain outcome, as the markets haven't been rewarding us for the risk that we have been taking. And that's why we need to become very patient, because betting on a certain outcome in the markets is generally also facing the downward structure of it, which is yielding yourself a lot of loss, and that's the purpose of what the markets are generally doing. However, if Ethereum is outperforming Bitcoin, which is currently the case, in that sense, it's going to take some time before the mid caps and the small caps start to take over. At this point, we are in an Ethereum market, and then the next rally is going to be altcoin markets, or at least they start to take some momentum. So we have been going through this in the previous markets, in the previous bear markets, and last year, April 2024, has shown that once the markets are going to go back up, it's going to provide a lot of upside to be made with those altcoins. At this point, it is primarily a macroeconomic driven market, which needs to change and opens the door for risk on investment. So the moment that that is going to be changing, that's going to be the climate that we need for altcoins, which means that we're going to have a great return. I'll be back with new updates next week. Thanks for watching to this short update. I'll see you again. Ciao.